Welcome to the Miss Retrospective, where we take classic matches and look at them through a modern lens. I'm here with my guest, Trolleyzz, who I've known for 4 years now, I want to say, or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
4 and a bit.
something
It's
around there.
actually
Because
been just shy of 4 years ago since we met.
I was gonna say, like, it's been five actually, because we went to the Royal Rumble, 2022, 23, whichever one was Sammy and Roman. Which, funny enough, I
Yeah,
got Roman's shirt on today. But
I had to
yeah,
bust out the fancy attire for you too.
hey, there we go. That's how we roll. But ladies and gentlemen, this guy is actually one of my first few guests that isn't actually involved in the wrestling business, and he is a fan. He is strictly coming to us from a fan perspective. So before we get further into the match we're going to be talking about, why don't you let the people know a little bit about yourself, what your background is with wrestling, I guess how you got into it and stuff. That way they kind of see where your perspective's coming from.
Yeah. So my name is Brandon, or Trolleyzz, as you could see by my name tag there. Um, Basically, I've been a fan of wrestling for realistically over 20 years. I'm 26. But it goes back as far as I can remember. Early 2000s. I was around when Cena debuted, like the '02 era, Ruthless Aggression. I quickly transitioned into like a lot of TNA watching. Especially when Jeff Hardy hopped over there for the first time. That was a fond memory of mine. But I've just been watching like almost addictively for 20 years, more so over the past decade. Like Kirby briefly mentioned there, we got the chance to hang out and go to the Rumble together as well. That was an amazing experience. But no, my point of view on wrestling is pretty, I won't say generic, but very open-minded. I'm not somebody who really gets mad at the heels. I more appreciate their work, and I like to have more of an open mind when it comes to what they're doing with the storylines compared to just the art that they're producing in the ring. So I don't feel like I have that mentality that wrestling fans get stereotypes for. I feel like I have one that I watch it more for entertainment in comparison to, oh my god, it's so fake, because it's not.
It's predetermined. We hate the F word
It's
around this
predetermined.
house.
Yeah, we
Um,
hate that word.
So it's really funny that you said that you got with TNA when Jeff Hardy hopped out or hopped in rather.
Yeah.
So did you always watch TNA? Like, did you hear about it before the Jeff Hardy thing, or was the Jeff Hardy thing what made you want to watch TNA?
Kind of at the same time that it happened. I didn't really pay attention to Jeff Hardy hopping over per se, and that's what made me watch TNA. I started watching at the exact same time. I was just like, I'm liking WWE a little bit. My dad put TNA on randomly on a Thursday night, and I just kind of got hooked. I liked the smaller crowd. I like the it almost felt like there was more energy for that show compared to WWE at the time. And then Jeff Hardy is my favorite wrestler of all time. And it just so happened that him hopping over there was a nice little bonus because I like the Hardy Boys right early on, and then I saw him hop in, and I'm just like, I like this. Saw AJ Styles in his prime, a couple other wrestlers, and Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, Motor City Machine Guns, just to name a few that most people know nowadays. But seeing them in their early beginnings in TNA was a nice spectacle to witness before they transitioned into like the WWE and the AEW and everything like that as well. So, but no, I would say it was a random fluke occurrence for me.
Okay, that's it's also funny because for me, I also found TNA through Jeff Hardy because I remember at school somebody just brought in a DVD and it had Jeff Hardy in the front and it's a TNA wrestling and I was like, "What the hell's TNA wrestling?" And then I found out that apparently when Kurt went missing, that's where he went, and I
Yep.
was like, "Okay, I still don't know what this is, but it seems cool." And I watched that tape quite a bit. I have like vivid memories of Jeff Jarrett coming out like in a tuxedo suit almost kind of and talking about a ladder match with Jeff Hardy about for a world championship. I was like, I don't know who these people are, but what the fuck is happening right now? And so then eventually I found out that that's where Kurt went. And then I think I got cable in 2008, 2009, and that's when I actually started watching TNA. So a
Yeah.
lot of the older stuff I'm still like not there with quite yet. And the six-sided ring obviously is what caught my attention too. And I was like, okay, what's the difference here? And now that I've been in the business for almost a decade now, I know that people hate six-sided rings only because the performing in them is tougher. But for okay, so Jeff Hardy jumps to TNA. What
And
got you?
Parker.
Yeah, and then what I guess like what aside from the feeling of the building and just the smaller crowd and everything, is there anything else that like drew you to it? That's like this is where I want to watch because we're by the way, if you guys haven't picked it up yet, we're talking about TNA, specifically a TNA match in a little bit. So I guess like the thing that stood out the most to you as a new fan.
I would say it's a tie between the six-sided ring. I just like the uniqueness of it. Like everybody has the four-sided ring. This six-sided ring, I'm a math guy. I'm like, oh look, a hexagon. That's new. I was a nerd to that ring aspect in itself. And I didn't really see much of a difference between the four-sided and six-sided, but it was that little difference that kept me hooked. I would I will put the X division a slightly higher. I've been a fan of high flying over anything else when it comes to a wrestling style. X division is basically the cruiserweights for people that don't know, and it was just a lot of fast paced action, 15-minute matches. It never felt boring. And they had the unique aspects of like different styled matches that no other company could really replicate. Some good, some bad. We won't talk about the big red cell that was in the early 2010s, where there was a hole at the top for no reason, like an elimination chamber. But their whole X division in general was fantastic, and some wrestlers that aren't even cruiserweights anymore were in it back then, like AJ Styles when he was about 210 pounds and flying everywhere. That really kept me hooked into watching it because there really wasn't that great of a cruiserweight division outside of like Rey Mysterio in WWE. So
It's funny that you say that the cruiserweights when Samoa Joe was right there because the X division is not about weight limits; it's about no limits. And
yep.
quite frankly, I like that, especially with what the X division championship became and it is now. Basically, it's still the no limits, type of championship and everything. But since they introduced option C, even people can be like, "Hey, we can still win the X division title and then cash it in for a world championship." Which, funny enough, Chris Sabin was the first one to do that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And
He's one of the most iconic X Division champions of all time.
yeah, and that's kind of how I started getting notoriety for everybody from TNA as well, like the X division, right? I will admit, I think my favorite X division champion at the time of me watching was Austin Aries. So
I can
whenever
agree.
he showed up in WWE, I was like, "Oh shit, he's here!" And unfortunately, that did not end too well. And then all the stuff started coming out about Austin Aries after that. But that's neither here nor there because I
Mhm.
care more about the performers. Like if you entertain me at the time, cool, that's fine. All the outside stuff, whatever, I don't care. That's like your own personal stuff. But
Yep.
that you're right, the X division was really what really separated TNA, I feel, from everybody else, because even the match that we're going to be talking about, AJ Styles, PD Williams, and Chris Sabin from Final Resolution 2005, the Ultimate X match, was, like you said, not like the pace was insane. And
Mhm.
even if you're talking about just cruiserweights, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna see like an Ultimate X match with like Samoa Joe or something eventually down the line. That's like, holy shit! Like this dude is just like doing some crazy fucking stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I know you wanted to do the Unbreakable match first, but I'm holding that for a special somebody later on down the line and stuff.
Listen,
But
that triple threat is legendary, but I gave you a good triple threat,
I
I
know.
feel like.
No, it was awesome because the funny thing is, PD Williams, obviously known as the guy that created the Canadian Destroyer. I've seen him work a little bit towards later on, like 2009 ish, whenever he became Small PD Pump
Mhm.
with Scott Steiner and everything. So I know he has the character work down. But seeing him as part of Team Canada was really cool because I know Team Canada was a massive faction in TNA at the time. Do you think maybe that's why TNA kind of got big in Canada? Because I do know that they like drew a lot of Canadian ratings and stuff like that. They kind of really made their name in Canada a lot.
I wouldn't be surprised just because like for us, from what I remember, there wasn't really any notable wrestling shows or companies in Canada at the time, but there's a lot of Canadian wrestlers, right? And all of them were going down to America for their opportunities and even like New Japan and stuff like that. But that was more so into the early 2010s, I would say, like late 2000 or late 2000s. But before like Santino Marella created Destiny up here, there wasn't really much. And TNA was always something where it was on Canadian cable, it was easy to access, it was on a unique night on Thursdays. I feel like just a lot of those little aspects played into the fan base growing up here a lot. And then from there, just Canadian wrestlers, Canadian factions, it draws in Canadian viewers, no matter what promotion it is. While I didn't watch for Team Canada, obviously I see Canada, I'm like, okay, I like it. We're good. We'll beat the Americans.
Mhm.
But more times than not, we lose. But we don't talk about that.
I love the fact that Canadians are so passionate about their own people because that reminds me a lot of Mexicans too. Like if I see a Mexican flag anywhere, I'm like, that's my people. I like you. And then listening to like Chris Van Vliet and just other Canadians that I know, Chad Potine, who was recently on the podcast,
Mm,
if I say Canadian, they're like, who, where, what, hmm, and then like they just immediately start just bouncing off of all the Canadians that they know, and then they're just like, I'm once they win, we win. Like everybody just kind of wins together as a nation, and I feel like that's
exactly.
like it's healthy nationalism that I actually really enjoy. So that's why I wanted to ask about the Team Canada stuff because I mean I'm a fan of Bobby Roode, I'm a fan of Eric Young, I'm a fan of Petey Williams, Chelsea Green in WWE is killing it right now. She's Canadian.
Wait for you to say your main. Sami Zayn for world president.
Yeah,
Come on.
of course. I mean, dude, that championship right here literally has the plates. So, Kevin Owens, other people like literally the Canadians just have such a great representation everywhere. And, again, just you guys are some of the most passionate people about your own people that I've ever seen. And it's always just great to see.
As I'm wearing the American flag on my chest.
Right? We're just all kinds of backwards right now. We're just all kinds of
Yep.
backwards. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about how the Ultimate X match came to be because I know that I think Frankie Kazarian and I forget who else was in the very first one. How many Ultimate X matches had happened up until this point?
I wish I could tell you an exact number. Just off memory, I think this was one of the first five.
Hmm.
I could be wrong in saying that, but I think this was the one that had the most impact, just because
Haha,
each
Impact.
each each competitor in this match had something to go for. While TNA was only in its first 5 years at this point, um, PD Williams was the longest X Division champion at only 5 months. So this title was still relatively new. The X Division itself was still relatively new. And as you mentioned, it was an open title. It wasn't like a cruiserweight title where you had to be under or the 205 Live Cruiserweight Championship, where you had to be in a certain threshold. Where AJ Styles, I think at that time had not won it yet. And that was the only title he hasn't won. Chris Sabin has already won it 3 times, and he was going for the fourth to be the tied for the most reigns at the time. And then Petey Williams looking to extend his streak of over 5 months. I think with the X Division match, this one had the most significance, but I still think it was one of the early ones. Um, but it was just the most unique match that they created. 4 cables above a ring. Like it looks so simple, but not many people could do it. You throw a Samoa Joe, you throw a Bobby Lashley, they're not hanging off this rope for like 30 seconds to a minute, like
Yeah.
4 times in a match. So I think that this match, while it was still gonna build up to its reputation, I still think it was in its infant stage at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, we talk about the Ultimate X match just being unique. We've seen
Mhm.
ladder matches, we've seen cage matches, we've seen like all kinds of stuff, and that's what we're kind of used to. So
Mhm.
to create a new stipulation, this is actually something we just talked about on another Canadian episode we just did recently. Actually, was creating a stipulation is so difficult, and having it stick and
Yeah.
making it something new and exciting every single time for it to be in its infancy. You're trying to top the last one, and then when the next one comes around, you're trying to top the last two, and then you come
Yep.
up to the fourth one, you're trying to top the last three, and like what new things you can come up with. And I mean, I didn't know that this was the match where the infamous drop kick happened from the top of the cable, and when I saw like the camera shot, I was like, oh god, I know what's coming. And then I see the drop kick happen, and then the flip, I'm just like, fuck, dude, that fall, the fact that AJ Styles fell like as flat as he could
Yep.
from that height, I would be freaking the fuck out because I don't do falling. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm afraid of falling. That's why
You
I
and I
could
have
not
the
be a
exact
wrestler.
same fear.
Yeah. So I'm like, and a lot of people are like, no, you're just afraid of heights. I'm like, no, I'm really not. I can look down. It's fine. But if I'm
Yeah,
falling, that sensation in my stomach, I'm just like, I don't like this.
I
I
hate
don't
it.
like this at all. So just to see that finally happen in the full context and everything was really cool. And I saw the gear and I was like, why does this gear look familiar? And I had no idea why until it happened. So
Yep.
so you said this was probably like in the first five or so. Had there been
Roughly.
any other crazy spots prior to this one that was kind of like this is how we top that one?
In in the Ultimate X match, I don't believe so, not off the top of my brain. I would say that this is the most infamous spot by
Hmm.
far, when it comes to the Ultimate X matches. While I do believe that there were other spots that tried to match it, this is always the first one that comes to my head. You always mention X Division in general, not even just Ultimate X match. I think of X Division, I think of two things: that spot and Chris Sabin. And both of them just so happen to correlate to each other. But Chris Sabin, I think of like so many reigns, just that title synonymous with him, like the White Intercontinental with Cody Rhodes,
Hmm.
right? The modern one. It's one of those things that just I attach it to a specific person. So X Division for me is Chris Sabin. But yeah, no, that match, I don't think there was any spots beforehand. I can't remember any spots afterhand. That was the most iconic spot. That and the Hurricane Rana, that was also in the same match. But
Hmm. I was gonna say the white championship I associate with the Miz, but that's just me.
you could be wrong. It's okay.
I mean, Cody Rhodes did reintroduce it. I will say that. I will say that.
Hmm.
Okay, so 2005 Final Resolution. I think this is the first Final Resolution that ever happened, and this is when TNA was really on the upswing. And
Hmm.
I find it fascinating that TNA was basically from the grave of WCW. That's where they came from. That's Jeff Jarrett creates the company, and they had a very WCW feel, which
Hmm.
at the time watching TNA, I had no idea what WCW was because I knew of it, but I
Yeah,
didn't know what it was like to watch one of their shows. And now that I've been doing this
same here.
podcast a little bit, I get the feeling of WCW a little bit more now. And this really felt like WCW. They're going to have their main guys like, Jeff Jarrett, Monty Brown, Abyss later on down the line and everything.
Hmm.
But what really drew the hardcore fan was the cruiserweights, which in this case was the X division. So, that strategy really seemed to work. In your opinion, because this is actually something I just thought about. In your opinion, why do you think that specific game plan hasn't worked for WWE? Because they've tried introducing cruiserweights and it just hasn't
Yeah.
really hit as hard as TNA or WCW.
I just think it's a completely different fan base. Like, we are almost the minority of the WWE fans that watch other promotions, right? And I feel like it's because we have more of a deep understanding and appreciation for wrestling in general and not just the company. WWE has never really been a cruiserweight brand. It's been those big muscular guys since like the 80s and 90s, and that's what everybody grew up watching. All of a sudden you see a high flyer who's hitting a 450 off the top rope and you're like, that doesn't fit what I watch. I don't like that. People are afraid to change.
True.
And I feel like the cruiserweights was the change that just nobody wanted to accept, as those long time single mindset brains on the WWE. I just feel like, and also older people as well, just don't really like cruiserweights in general. My dad is not the biggest fan of cruiserweights. He more prefers the slow, methodical style. Um, yeah, no, I think it's just people were afraid of change, and that change was just a little too much for them to accept.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense because I do know hearing a lot of WWE people like, oh, the storytelling, it's got to be, give me cinema. And I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, but sometimes cruiserweights are cool. They do some crazy shit that you're like basically defying gravity.
yeah,
That's what it's about for a lot of the cruiserweights. But I mean, they can still tell amazing stories. I mean, again, look at Rey Mysterio. He's the outlier to everything because he's just an incredible talent.
yeah.
But it's just funny to think about like TNA and WCW got notoriety because of the cruiserweights for the hardcore
Mhm.
fans, and then WWE just hasn't been able to capitalize on that. And it's fascinating. I'm actually going to talk to like people at school about that and be like, hey, why does this happen? And then just kind of get more knowledge from that, see what they think.
Yeah, I think it's just the change aspect, but also what's funny is those people from TNA that have come over, that are the high flyers, not working out in WWE, even though they already have the fan base. Like you think that a hive mind would almost kick in there for a little bit, but if you were to name three like top cruiserweights in WWE, you're going Rey Mysterio, you're probably going like RVD, and then your third might be Jeff Hardy, but he's not even really a cruiserweight. But
Yeah.
like outside of that, it's only two really that people name is Rey Mysterio and RVD. Despite Eddie Guerrero, he wasn't a cruiserweight, but he flew like one. And the more recent ones of like Neville, where he was able to pull out the Falcon or the Red Arrow. I don't know why I was forgetting the names. Where he's able to pull that out, and that was a spectacle. But that was the only thing people cared about in the match,
Hmm.
even though he was undeniably one of the best talents on the roster. Everybody always goes back to those two, Rey Mysterio, RVD, because one person looked like a hippie and the old people loved it, and the other person literally defied all odds, being like 5'3", beating people over 6 foot. I think
I
people just gravitated towards that.
I love whenever people talk about Rey Mysterio being short because whenever I met him, it was hilarious that he just walked right in front of me and was like, "Oh, hey, Ray," and then I was just like, "Oh shit, that was Rey Mysterio," and he was like this tall, like he was literally this tall, and I was like, "That's amazing." That like I finally have like a grasp of how big he is because a lot of
Yeah.
people get talked about as like, "Oh, on TV you look normal," but then you see them in person, like, "Oh shit, you're like this tall. What the fuck?"
Yep.
And then Rey Mysterio is the complete opposite, and it's amazing, especially with Dom being like what 6'2" or 6'3" or whatever.
Yeah. Where did the height come from?
Eddie Guerrero, obviously.
Not true. True.
Okay, so let's start talking about the match then. So
Yeah.
it starts, and then shouts out to Mike Tenay and RIP Don West. Two amazing commentators. They're literally synonymous with TNA because even though there were other commentators here and there, they were basically like the people for the prime TNA, as I'm gonna call it, because they changed to Impact, and then we had Josh Matthews and other people hop onto the commentator. I think Jeremy Borash also did commentary for a little bit.
You know
Um,
better than me.
and now it's Tom Hannafin and Matt Raywalt, who's amazing. Both of those guys, incredible talents for sure. And I've learned from Tom Hannafin directly before, and I'm just like, I wish people had taught me what you taught me because holy crap. But great commentator. So, but Tanae, obviously, I've been hearing a lot of Tanae from WCW, so he was kind of the analyst there. So to hear him now as play by play was fantastic because he's still the same Mike Tenay, super knowledgeable, super just knowing all the stories, knowing how to intertwine everything together, and then
Yeah.
Don West just being that over the. It's funny when you think of color commentators because you're always kind of conditioned to believe that they're supposed to be the heels, they're supposed to be the flavor to the commentary, but this really felt like just two dudes sitting at a bar talking about wrestling, and it very much reminds me of the Michael Cole Pat McAfee duo that we had over the last 4 or 5 years or so, because
One
they
of my
just
favorite duos.
they're amazing, and I think that's kind of why I enjoyed Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, and I just didn't know because they just had that connection of we just love wrestling. We're just
Mhm.
gonna be sitting down here at a bar drinking, and we're just gonna be calling the action as we see it. And there was never really any heel until the storyline later on, which is kind of But
Yeah.
the at the time that dynamic was just tremendous, and I think really that's what helped elevate not just this match but also TNA as a whole at the time.
Can 100% agree with you. It's just the storytelling through the commentators is such an underrated aspect as somebody who just strictly watched through the TV.
Hmm.
I had or I did end up going to TNA Rebellion the same year that we went to Rumble. It was like 3 months after,
Hmm.
and that was fantastic. But I hadn't watched TNA for a couple of years at that point, and the majority of the people I didn't know. I knew a couple of the names that were the big ones like Moose, but I never really sat down and watched TNA. But I'm right behind the commentators, and I
Hmm.
can still hear them talking
Hell
during the
yeah.
match. It added that little extra flavor of just this feels like nostalgia, and I really like it.
Hell yeah. I wish I could hear commentary every time I'm there, but obviously I'm there for the live experience. I want to be part of the crowd. I want to enjoy my time there. But I want to hear the commentary because I mean that's my back. That's what I do.
Of course.
And I want to, if I could just listen to as a matter of fact, that's what I do. I watch wrestling while I'm doing cardio, and I just listen to
Yep,
commentary, and that's just gonna my focus. So that way I lose track of time and everything when I'm doing cardio because cardio hurts. But
it does.
um, like I love listening to the older generation of commentators because my brain is so WWE coded that I'm like, oh, do the story, do this, don't call moves, and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So it's always fascinating to hear older dynamics, especially when I hear like the little things, and I was like, oh, this has always been a thing. For example, I watched I think it was Joey Styles in '97, and I was like, that's something that we get taught still to this day, like almost 30 years later now. And
Mhm.
it's fascinating that that art of storytelling and commentary has carried on for as long as it has.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as into the scene as you are because obviously I don't do commentary, but
Do you
no,
want to?
it's one of those things. Listen, I'm pretty good at talking to a camera. Imagine me talking about something in front of me. Like, I think I'd be pretty decent at it. It's just, I feel like my style would be more calling them moves. Even
Mhm.
though I messed up calling Neville's move wrong,
It
uh,
happens.
I feel like I would be a person that would call the moves. But, like, if I were to do it, I would, in my head, I would need to be a perfectionist.
Mhm.
And that just doesn't exist.
That's fair.
The closest thing I could think of is like Excalibur. His knowledge on moves is almost second to none.
Yeah. No, he's
So,
he's tremendous. He talks a mile an hour, and yet he still somehow doesn't stumble and is able to call everything perfectly.
yep.
That
Yep.
if I called moves, that'd be goals. But I do it the easier way. I just call what I see rather than the actual move name and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so the X division or the Ultimate X match. The rules are
Yes.
simple for those of you guys that have never seen an Ultimate X match or don't know what it's about or what TNA even is. There's four cables connected to four corners of the ring, and as we talked about, it's a hexagon. So there's six sides to the ring. The four typical corners before it extends off to the sides have the steel beams going up, and then cables connecting in the center. The championship is hung up from the center, and there's only one rule: you have to bring the belt down, and as you have possession of it, you win the match. There's no
Yep.
ladders. There's no other thing to help you climb. You got to go up the steel beams. You got to somehow like get your way across one of the cables and then pull the championship down. So it's basically a ladder match without the ladder. That's the easiest way that I could explain it. But it also takes some insane upper body strength because you have to hang yourself from those ropes as you're climbing across. And that's like, dude, that's terrifying. I could not imagine having that kind of upper body strength to be able to do that. And that's why earlier when you said imagine Bobby Lashley or Samoa Joe doing this, like that's a lot of weight to carry. And I'm literally actually I'm gonna Google this right now since I have the power to do so. I'm gonna see if Samoa Joe was in an Ultimate X match.
And the funny part about the Ultimate X match too is like the underrated aspect is the grip strength. You're holding onto a cable that's wrapped on a thin layer of rubber.
He was in one in 2003 at Bound for Glory.
That was one of the first ones then. And
No,
then I
2013.
gotta be wrong. Oh, 2013. I thought
Yeah,
you said
so it's 8
2003. My
years
fault.
later. All right,
Oh
I'm gonna go
my.
look for that because I feel like I
Yep.
have seen that because I didn't watch pay-per-views. I just kind of
Mhm.
caught the highlights of them because I didn't have money because I was young and stupid. But now I'm gonna go
I
look
was
for that
just young.
because I want to see Samoa Joe try and do the Ultimate X because that again, like no disrespect. I don't say that to be disrespectful for anybody
No,
listening and stuff.
obviously.
Like that takes amazing like cardio and just strength in general. And
Mhm.
I know Samoa Joe is a freak athlete, so I want to see that with my own eyes. Be like, holy crap, this happened.
Oh yeah, and that's why I said like Samoa Joe and Bobby Lashley, two prime examples from
Hmm.
TNA, but those aren't people that you associate with an Ultimate X match.
Yeah,
So, like I wasn't saying it in any disrespectful way. Either way, they're both tremendous athletes, and Bobby Lashley could probably do like 75, 80 pull-ups on that cable.
yeah,
But throughout an entire match, like that endurance, while he has it, it's going to add a lot of fatigue to a match that requires such agility to get across that rope,
yeah,
and then the
and
spots on the rope as well.
yeah. That just I was watching the match, and I think the first spot that really like stuck out to me, and I wrote a note to make sure to where I wanted to start was the dive to the outside. I didn't realize how small the areas outside were. And there's a reason why in NXT they do dives off of only one side. There's a
Yep.
reason why we at Row only do dives off of one side because there's not that much real estate around the ring to pull dives off. The
Hmm.
fact that AJ Styles pulled off a dive to the outside to Chris Sabin and PD Williams with that much real estate, dude, I'm like, this is madness. And this just goes to show how much he really cared about the performance as a whole because instead of waiting to like have it what's the word, premeditated or like predetermined that this is going to be where the dive goes, we have to somehow work over here. I'm just going to
Hmm.
fucking dive off wherever I want. And
Yep.
not missing the he didn't even hit the steel post, the barricades, like at all.
Nope.
He managed to fly, no pun intended, and still land where he was supposed to, and just do damage off of that. I'm just like, how do you have that much body control that you can pull that off? And I mean, you
And
said
trust in your opponents.
exactly. I mean, you said it was Prime AJ Styles. I would think that Prime AJ Styles was New Japan AJ Styles, but
Okay.
this was the earlier one, like the first Prime. We'll say he has two
Yeah,
primes because this is
he
where he
does.
really started getting his notoriety from the X Division stuff before he bulked up to be the world champion.
Mhm.
But dude, AJ Styles, seeing young AJ Styles is such a treat because nowadays people talk about Leon Slater being kind of like that AJ Styles, where
Yep,
right now he has such amazing skill, but once he gets older, he's gonna be even better. I'm like, I could see it because
yep.
the AJ Styles of now, or the AJ Styles of then, is what I know. And when he popped into WWE, obviously I was like, okay, he just had his New Japan run. He was incredible over there, and now he shows up at the Royal Rumble 10 years ago now, and it was awesome seeing it then. It was 10 years ago now. It's 2016. It's 2026, brother. I feel
I
like
hate
I
you.
just popped a brain vessel.
I hate you. That felt like 4 years ago. Like,
Dude,
this felt
no,
like COVID doesn't feel like 5 years ago or
it
4 years
doesn't.
ago. It feels like last year. Like, what has happened between 2022 to 2025?
Dude,
And then 2016 to 2020 is 1 year for me.
time stopped at 2020. That's my
It
theory.
really
Like
did.
time literally stopped. My brain is still in 2020. I'm just like, nope, everything else is just I've been having a fever dream. That's why when Sammy wins the title, that'll be like the ultimate fever. That's when I'm waking up.
Yep.
It's
You went
all
to
been a
sleep, AJ
lie,
Styles debuted, and now you're waking up, Sami Zayn's winning a world title. Just like, damn, what happened in that past 12 hours?
right? So okay, so AJ Styles at the time was I like to think the face of TNA, even though he wasn't really given that kind of trust from the office, or at least that's the stuff that I've heard,
Mhm.
because he always wanted more.
Yeah,
But you know, at first maybe that's what he was being positioned as, but then Hogan and Bischoff came in, Dixie comes in, and all
mhm.
the WCW bullshittery, as we'll call it, comes in and kind
The
of
original
does,
authority.
yeah, and it kind of like does it creates LOL TNA basically.
Yeah.
That's the reason LOL TNA exists.
Mhm.
So how do I want to phrase this question? Had that not happened, how different do you think AJ Styles' career would have been had he stuck with TNA forever? Could he have been like the Tanahashi of TNA?
If there was, like, no Hogan, Dixie
Yeah,
era kinda thing, no
yeah,
low TNA, oh, no, he would have never stepped foot in WWE. He would have been the Tanahashi of TNA. I low key think he would have been retired by now as well. I don't think he would have, despite having less of a workload than what he does now, I think he would not have gone for as long because he would have accomplished everything. And if there was anywhere he would have went, it would have been AEW at that point. I think just that style wise before WWE got TNA basically, or made that like partnership. I I don't see AJ Styles leaving TNA, and if he did, it was nowhere near WWE.
interesting. Yeah, because I know again, he was Mr. TNA. Everybody
Yeah.
knew TNA because of, or everybody heard of TNA because of Kurt Angle, because of Jeff Hardy, all these people that came from WWE and everything.
Yep.
But when they stuck around,
Sting.
they stuck around. Oh yeah, Sting. Yeah, you're right. They stuck around because of AJ Styles, and that's kind of where people started hearing that name more and more. And I know that when I started watching it more, I became aware of it. I was like, oh, AJ Styles, kind of cool.
Mhm.
And then once I started watching it, I got super invested in AJ Styles. And then he did that Lone Wolf story, which ultimately led to his departure, which led to his New Japan run and everything.
Yep.
And obviously, at the time I was super into dirt sheets. I mean, I still am, only because they make me laugh now. I'm just like, that's funny. But the at the time, like everybody that watched TNA knew AJ Styles was going to be the breakout star.
Oh yeah.
And I also want to give props to everybody in the X division: Petey Williams, Chris Sabin, Alex Shelley, Elix Skipper, Frankie Kazarian, all those people.
Oh
Because
yeah.
something that we are taught in wrestling is that when there's a guy at the top, you do everything you can to work for that guy to continue to make them the top guy. And I
Mhm.
really feel that AJ Styles was that guy, but it takes more than one to tango. So to
Oh
have
yeah.
everybody have the trust in AJ Styles and the division as a whole to continue to prop each other up is fantastic. Especially, with the career that they've all had. Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley, Motor City Machine Guns, one of the greatest tag teams of all time.
One of my
Um,
favorite.
and Elix Skipper has that the walk of the top of the cage spot that everybody keeps talking about. And
I almost gave you that match.
I quite frankly, I feel like he was very underrated, and I want to do more research on his career because I do know that he is retired, if I'm not mistaken. So he hasn't wrestled in a while. Petey Williams, the innovator of the Canadian Destroyer, Frankie Kazarian, now a TNA World Champion. Finally making it to the top of the mountain and being one of the mainstays. Christopher Daniels being literally one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. Samoa Joe, I mean, that goes without saying. A
Yeah.
two-time AEW World Champion. So that division as a whole really just showed that talent can be caught in the lightning in a bottle, but you need to make the best of it because
Oh
you
yeah.
never know where they're gonna end up at and stuff. So you want to make the best of the time that you have with that talent at the time to make them the biggest stars possible.
Yep. And when you think of TNA, there's nobody else that comes first outside of AJ Styles. Hence why, the match with John Cena with, TNA is the house that he built and
That
all
was
that stuff.
amazing.
The callback with AJ Styles gear to his gear to TNA, which is infamous in that spot as well from the cable. Like that that match made me cry because of the nostalgia that I had with my growing up on both sides of the wrestling fan base with
Hmm.
John Cena as like, the top guy from the late 2000s and AJ Styles being the top guy in TNA that I was watching. Just that match was the best match that they've ever had and it was such a beautiful send-off love letter to wrestling.
What I'm about to drop something on you that I don't know if you've heard this before or if you even thought about it. I think that John Cena AJ Styles happening how it did, like with TNA versus WWE basically, was what we missed out on with Undertaker and Sting because we never got that match. So they were like the two faces of their companies and like it had like quote unquote similar gimmicks,
Yeah.
and we got it with Cena and Styles. So
And
it took a
yeah.
while, but we got there.
Only a couple decades late, but it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and it's really funny too thinking about that match because I at first whenever AJ hit the super kick, I was like, "Oh, sweet chin music" because he tuned up the band. And then later I was like, "Wait, that was the last call." And then when he did the Deadeye, I was like, "Oh,
Yep.
Hangman Page." But I was like, "No, wait, that was Frankie Kazarian." And it hit me later on. I was like, "This is literally TNA's moves of the people
Yep.
from his career and everything." And while John Cena's hitting WWE moves, which you want to talk about crying, brother, when he did Sister Abigail, that was. Oh man, I was. It's funny because I was watching the match in the morning when it was airing live on my phone because me and Heather had just moved into the house, so I
Yeah.
just had it on my phone. And I was just watching it, and when he hit Sister Abigail, she heard me like kind of like whimper, like holding back cries. She's like, "What's happening?" I was like, "I'll tell you later." But it was awesome. Like that match was truly incredible. If you know the history of both guys, fuck the story. That is the story. Is the
Yeah.
two faces of each company and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's the funny part is you saying like, "Oh yeah, sweet chin music," and then you're like, "No, wait a minute." When I was watching it with my buddies, I was calling the moves from TNA,
Mhm.
and my buddy goes, "Sweet chin music." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no,
The last
that's
call.
not it."
It was awesome. That match truly was sensational. I think I'm gonna go back and watch it here shortly.
I
Because
might go watch it after this.
as a matter of fact, hold on, I'm gonna go grab something. This just arrived, and
Ooh, let's see.
I'm very happy with it. Yeah. So I have like all the final match merch coming and everything.
Wait, all of it?
Not all of it, but majority of it. I have this. I'm never
Oh
wearing it.
my
I'm
god.
never wearing it. Literally
Yep.
still has the little stuff inside, so I'm just gonna hang it up.
What do you mean? Wear it on your wedding day?
No, I'm wearing this on my wedding day.
Ah, there you go.
So trust me, I've got all the merch, dude. Like the John Cena retirement tour, I think was a hit. Just it was awesome, and AJ had a massive part in it from that one match, and he
Oh
wouldn't have
yeah.
gotten there had he not done crazy stuff like the Ultimate X match, because Ultimate X was fantastic. It was awesome.
Yep. And like that match between Cena and AJ is that was the best match by far in the entire retirement tour. Like hands down, nobody can change my mind. It did exactly what it needed to do and then some. And I don't think there will be another match like that for at least another decade.
Better than Cody at SummerSlam?
Yes,
Wow. Okay. I'm
I
not gonna
think the Cody.
argue.
I think the Cody SummerSlam match is a good second. I don't see that being beat by anything else outside of the AJ match, but like if I'm like Dave Meltzer, I'm rating the Cody Cena match like a 4.5.
Mhm.
And then I'm rating the AJ and Cena match like a 5.5. Like it's such a big jump.
Fair enough. I was gonna say the only reason I think the Cody match stands above for me is
Mhm.
because I mean I grew up WWE for 22 years now, and to me, Cody is the only one that's beaten Super Cena clean.
You're not wrong, but
Yeah,
it was like, despite the AJ Cena match being a finisher spam,
yeah,
basically, like the Super Cena Super Cody match was that was a finisher
yeah,
spam.
yeah.
Like kicking out of an Attitude AA after two other AAs. I'm like, okay, come on, this is a little much for Cody.
It was fun. It was fun. That's how determined he was to win back the championship.
That is
So,
true.
um, so yeah. Okay. So back to the Ultimate X match.
Yes.
This was, if I'm not mistaken, when Dusty Rhodes was the authority figure, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's because that's what I picked up off of commentary. So I just wanted to make sure. I like the fact that they called him Director of Authority because that's literally the title Santino has. And I thought it
Yep.
was hilarious that he was called the Director of Authority. I was like, oh, because I don't want to use General Manager because that's such a WWE thing. Even at Raw, we don't call them General Managers. We call them Executive Managers because, again, that's
Okay.
like, our distinction and everything. So I didn't actually realize that this was a callback to Dusty Rhodes being the Director of Authority because we never really had that role as far as when I was watching TNA. I didn't know that that
Hmm.
was already a thing established from previous canon.
Yep.
So that's cool. And the fact that it was Dusty Rhodes also like precursor to NXT because NXT didn't exist back then was really cool because obviously I've learned a lot of stuff from people that have worked for WWE, and a lot of
Yeah.
people are like Dusty said, Dusty said, Dusty said, and I'm like everything you're telling me is stuff that I already think about. So it just makes me feel like I would have had a great relationship with Dusty Rhodes had I gotten the chance to work with him because
Oh
he
yeah.
teaches a lot of stuff that I'm just like that just makes too much sense. Why
Hmm.
wouldn't you do it this way?
Yep. And Dusty's just like that name is synonymous with wrestling. Rest in peace to him. But it was nice when sorry, like I gave you that match and then I went back and watched it and then I was watching the build up and it was Dusty Rhodes, the director of authority, is making this match and I'm just like, oh my god, such nostalgia just hit me and like now having the experience of wrestling that I do now and going back 20 years to watch that, it felt so much better.
Yeah, I really feel like watching stuff back. It's really interesting. Like watching stuff back when you know you like it, you
Hmm.
see it from a different lens because you're like, oh, how has the game evolved? How is it different now? And then now for me, watching stuff that I've never watched before, it's even more interesting in my opinion because it's like I work in wrestling, so obviously my point of view is going to be completely skewed in a business standpoint. But just
Of
from a
course.
performance standpoint, it's also amazing to see what holds up through the test of time. Like I've been watching a lot of WCW lately, and that stands the
Hmm.
test of time. I'm watching a lot of early ECW, and I'm like, this is kind of only because like of the dangerous spots that they put themselves through. But
Yep.
once I remember, it's like this was the '90s. We didn't have as much knowledge about concussions as we do now, and I can
Yeah.
see where they stood out in their own little pocket of wrestling and everything. And as we always say, it might not be my favorite of ice cream that I like, but other people like it, and if you like it, hey, I'm not gonna yuck your yum, right? So just to see matches like this that are 20 years old now, I'm just like, this is kind of great because it shows that I can see where the roots of where wrestling has evolved to now started from
Oh
because
yeah.
the X division feels a lot like of AEW, at least to some extent for me.
Yeah.
And I still see those same spots from the Motor City Machine Guns happen in WWE, like the quick pace tag,
Yep.
kind of it feels spotty, but it's for a purpose rather than just like
Yep.
let me do a spot, let me get back up, let me do a spot, let me get back up. It's like no, it's to build a story for later on.
Oh yeah, I like almost every single wrestler has their spot, right?
Mhm.
Where it's that sequence of moves or it's that little event that happens almost every single match. but it's a spot for a reason because it does a callback, especially for like Motor City Machine Guns being around for over 20 years, or around 20 years at this point. And they do that spot in WWE, and all the TNA fans go like, "Yeah, this feels like nostalgia." Cena's 5 moves of doom, like that's always a nostalgia. Been doing it for over 20 years. I have that mindset where I don't mind a spot if it's a good spot, and I don't care how many times you do it. It could be a good spot every single time for me.
Hmm.
If it's a bad spot, please don't ever do it again.
Hmm.
Don't make
Yeah.
it go over.
And the craziest part too about the Ultimate X is that in this match, I felt like there were no bad spots.
Nope.
I don't know how many times these specific spots were copied later on, either for homage or because it just made sense to do it in the moment. Like you
Mhm.
talked about it earlier, the Hurricane Rana off of the cable where somebody was in the electric chair position. I
Yep.
was just like, you can only do this in Ultimate X because you get that extra height from somebody being up at the cable. You can't even do that in a ladder match without somebody jumping off a ladder. But at that point, again, the psychology of it is, why would you jump off a ladder when the championship's right there, right?
Yeah, that's
And
exactly
the
it.
the people in the electric chair were in the way of getting to the X Division championship, so that made sense. And
Mhm.
it's those tiny little things that just continue to add up to the believability.
Yeah.
Because in wrestling, and this is the toughest test that I've had Heather go through, she's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would they do that? And it's like, oh, that's right. You're a casual fan. I forget that you don't get spots. Like everything that people do has to make sense.
Yes.
And she has been such a great introspective mirror to everything in wrestling. Because I'm just like, you're right. That doesn't make sense. How do we make it make sense? And then that's what I start thinking about now. So anytime I'm like, okay, that was cool, but I was like, wait, does it make sense though? And
Yeah.
that Heather giving me that insight has been tremendous in my growth as a critiquer of professional wrestling. But I kind of want to show her this match just to see what she thinks,
Yeah.
because the few matches that she's watched with me for the podcast, she watched Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio from Halloween Havoc, and she
Okay.
enjoyed that. And that was the first time she sat down. She's like, "Okay, what's this? I want to know more. This is wrestling. I don't get it. Like, how is this different than what it is now?" I'm like, this was 30 years ago. And so I've realized that she likes the worker style rather than the spot style that is kind of prevalent now, because obviously
Gotcha.
wrestling's evolved.
Yeah.
So I think she would enjoy. I think she would enjoy this
Yeah.
only because of not the chaoticness of it, but how
Mhm.
everything kind of made sense for that next spot and how it built up for that next spot.
Hey, you said you see like no bad spots in the match. The only one that I wish didn't happen for as long is AJ being hung up in the bar by
Mhm.
his one arm. I'm
Yeah.
like, on that, like I get the pulling part, but he should have snapped back and
Mhm.
like not flat back to the outside, but like fell to the outside
Yeah.
instead of being hung up there, holding on to himself, going like like that. And it went on for like almost 10 seconds. I'm like,
Mhm.
just let go. That's the only critique to the match I wish they changed.
Like,
Everything else is damn near perfect.
so do you mean like he should have dropped sooner, or should he?
Yes.
Okay,
I don't think he should have been caught up in it because like all you got to do is just fall.
fair enough. And
And
okay.
they weren't high enough to where it would have been like a risky spot or anything.
Mhm.
It's the exact same way like Petey Williams fell after he did the move,
Yeah.
right?
I
So it was just pulling the arm and then letting go.
I think, just from my perspective, it
Yeah.
made sense because they wanted to play up that story that he can't hang himself from the cable up at the top later on.
Yeah.
Uh
The story wise, it made sense.
yeah, because I mean, even like later on when he's like literally a fingertip away from the championship, he falls because he switches arms, and that's the bad arm. And
Yeah.
again, from what I'm taught, and
Mm.
again, we can agree to disagree. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. From my perspective, we have to pantomime to everybody what's going on, and if you
Mhm.
just fall, you don't give that illusion that you're hurt if they didn't see you
True.
hanging up from that arm. So
True.
it gave everybody a chance to be like, oh shit, like he's really hung up, and then he falls,
Mhm.
sells it, and then later on it's like, well, he hooked the arm. I was like, oh, that's right, that's the arm that he hurt, and it's the
Yeah.
little
What
things.
when you go down that route, I can fully agree with you. Then it makes sense. I just my mind, I'm just like you could have done it a slightly different way. Maybe like Petey Williams could have held on to the arm and was pulling for like
That
five
okay.
seconds,
I would
right?
absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
right? Something to where AJ Styles isn't sabotaging his own arm is what it felt like.
Hmm.
To an extent, but more just the one light little pull, and then his arm is stuck
Hmm.
when he could have just fell. I get it ties into the story, but I feel like that arm injury should have went a little bit more of just like done by somebody else instead of him kind of holding himself up. You know what I mean?
Understandable. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I do agree that the Petey Williams pulling on the arm would have done the same job, and put Petey Williams in a better position to be like, oh yeah, I'm the shit heel. I'm the one that's gonna
Yeah.
fucking hurt you to get that championship down.
Because he
Um,
went on that run in the middle of the match where just hitting everybody with everything. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, that is such a good heel.
dude, shouts out to that spot towards the end whenever AJ tries to hook the injured arm, but he falls because
Yeah.
he couldn't hang on, and then Petey Williams uses that moment to hit the Canadian Destroyer. I was like, I was waiting for a Canadian Destroyer because obviously that's fucking Petey Williams. But when the way that it was set up was sensational because it was AJ Styles falls, and as he's getting back up, he gets caught in
Yep.
it. So it was just
And
it
what
was
a sell.
flawless. Yeah.
What a
He had
sell.
that glazed look on his eye for like 5 fucking minutes after that. He's just like, I'm done. Like this is over. It's it.
Yep.
So that's when Chris Sabin and Petey Williams kind of go at it for a while, and then they go on opposite ends of each cable, and they try and meet in the middle, where we
Yep.
see them fight over the championship. They unhook it, and they're both fighting over it. But then AJ Styles comes in, swats it away, and then manages to grab it.
If he grabbed it instead of swatting it, all that spot was a perfect 10. It was a
Yeah.
9.5 because he had the recover rib and it thankfully landed beside him. But if he was able to get just enough height to grab it out of their hands and hold on to it all the way down, oh my. That
I
that would have been the spot of the match.
I wonder if that was the intended purpose. Like, if was he supposed to grab it rather than swat it away?
I feel like it was because like that where the title was a lot further than what it looked on TV.
Hmm.
And you could tell because, these wrestlers that are almost 6 feet tall are standing on the top rope and they can't get their hand onto the cable. They have to jump or they have to go one little rung up on the steel bar behind them up to get to the cable. So jumping from the top rope, basically springboarding to the middle of the ring, that's about, I don't know, another 8 feet above where you are and about 8 feet into the ring.
Hmm.
That's a far jump no matter who you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
I feel like the spot was to grab it, but just it was so far of a jump.
I don't blame him for not being able to grab it because, like you said, that's just an insane jump.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so before this happens, had there ever been a spot like this previously in Ultimate X so far, or has everybody been able to pretty much just unhook it and just grab the championship?
I think it's been similar to the Chris Sabin and Petey Williams where they were fighting up at the top, but then like somebody falls, the other person grabs it. Kind of like two people on a ladder, push them off, grab it, and you're done. I feel like that's always been the kind of spot. This was such a unique finish to the Ultimate X that I remember. And if they've ever done it again, it's obviously a callback, but I don't think there's been any other spots like this to end the match or to get the belt. I just think it's been kicking each other, hanging off the rope, or somebody hits like a cutter or their own Hurricane Rana from two people hanging off the rope, like little spots like that, but never something like this.
I remember a WWE match that ended kind of similar as well, actually. It was a ladder match. It was a triple threat ladder match. I forget who the third person was, but it was Jack Swagger, Dolph Ziggler, and some other third person, where Swagger and somebody else, was it Cody?
I'm trying to remember.
Okay, but you know the match I'm talking about, though, right?
Yes, yeah.
Where two people, it was Swagger and somebody else, grab the championship. They unhook it and they accidentally drop it. I think it was at a SummerSlam. I don't know why. I think it was a SummerSlam, and
It
then
feels like a SummerSlam match.
it falls to the ground, and then Ziggler grabs it, and he's considered the winner, even though he didn't climb the ladder because
Yeah.
he's the one that had possession, which was funny
Yep.
because I remember them talking about that on commentary quite a lot at the time. They're like, you have to go up the ladder, grab the briefcase, but you win the match when you have possession of the belt. So they drove that point home really hard. That way people weren't like, well, that's stupid. He didn't climb the ladder. And people still hated it because they're like, he didn't climb the ladder. It's like, he had the championship.
He got possession when it was on the ground. It's kind
Yeah.
of like when tag team ladder match and you throw a belt down to your partner.
Yeah.
Like that's the one thing. I'm waiting for a tag team title match to win where a member from each tag team has a belt. And like, what do you do from there?
I mean, they would technically technically we kind of did that at SummerSlam or not at WrestleMania last year when they split the belts up. And I say technically,
Yeah.
technically only because it was one team that won one team that won the other one.
Yeah.
So that's how they finally split the
You know
belts
what
up.
I'm
No,
referring to.
I know
Like,
exactly what you're
yeah,
referring to. Like opposite team members
they
grabbing
become
each
the tag
one.
team champs.
That dude, that would be a great story. I'm gonna pitch this to Booker and be like, "Hey Booker, can we introduce second belts just so we can?" No, actually, we do actually have something going on that I think that would be hilarious. I'm gonna pitch
Ooh,
it to Booker.
there you go.
I'm clipping this right now and be like, Booker, I'm booking reality of wrestling now.
Done. Light work. Because I'm
Thank
thinking,
you.
like, give it Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and the Usos, for example. Like, two tag teams where if Sammy had a belt and, like, Jey Uso had a belt, it makes sense for them to be tag team champs.
Dude,
Think about how funny that would be.
I could just imagine Booker looking at me and be like, "Hey kid, shut the fuck up." He probably would be so mad at me for pitching something so stupid.
But it
Uh,
works.
I mean, just given our current roster, I think I would enjoy seeing some shenanigans abound like that.
Yeah.
Not with our current champions because our current champions
Mhm.
are like very serious, very
Yeah.
serious, very face, and the team that they're potentially facing next are also very serious, very heel. So,
Mhm.
but down the line, once we get like
Yeah.
a good hearted team to pull that off and whatnot, I think it'll be a really fun little dynamic to go off of. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, this was a fantastic match. Truly, thank you for suggesting it. I had a lot of fun just watching it because again, the spots were kind of crazy, and we barely talked about the spots. We talked more about the history of the competitors in it, which it's good to look back at where their younger careers were and everything.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I watch more TNA. I want to watch more TNA. And throughout all of this stuff that I've done so far, the last 4 or 5 months that I've done this podcast, people are like, "Oh, WCW, ECW," and I was like, "But I want to watch TNA," and I haven't found anybody to watch TNA with yet. So thank you for being the first one that's like, "Yes, I'm gonna do TNA."
Listen, there was three matches I was willing to give you, and it was the triple threat, obvious. It was this one, and then there was the Full Metal Mayhem match between Jeff Hardy and Abyss,
What year was that? Because I may have seen that.
2005 as well.
Jeff Hardy,
That was the first
Abyss.
ever TLCC match.
Okay, I
Tables,
definitely
ladders,
haven't seen
chairs, and
that.
chains.
Okay, I definitely haven't seen that. So I do know Full Metal Mayhem was TLC.
It's
Um,
TLCC.
Okay. Okay. We may have that on the docket for later on. So, keep an ear out for that for all those listening because I definitely do want to do that in the future. But, I just want to do more TNA. I feel like I missed a lot of prime TNA because I watched maybe for like a year or two before Hogan and Bischoff came in. And then
Yeah.
they created the little TNA kind of gimmick and whatnot. And I mean, overall, just TNA in its prime was just fantastic, and I'm glad to see that it's still going now. I'm glad to see that people are starting to not necessarily use it as a launching pad, but use it as a means to have more TV time because TV wrestling is amazing.
Yeah.
We saw what it did for Joe Hendry. We saw what it did for Leon Slater. Now we saw the career resurgence from AJ Francis happen in TNA. Just amongst others. So
Oh yeah.
TNA really has its place now, and I hope that they have continued success. Oh, Mike Santana, that's another fantastic name that really made a name for themselves in TNA lately.
And
Um,
Ortiz just came back too
yeah, so
in AEW.
I'm happy that TNA still has a place in professional wrestling because you never know when you're going to be able to symbiotically have a relationship with a company that's going to take you to that next level. And I'm glad TNA has been able to do that for a lot of people now, especially
Yeah.
after the history that they've had, especially like in the mid 2010s.
I'm so happy that they were able to fight through that. Like they almost had to close their doors and everything. And then, but what's funny is with this match too, you don't realize that Team Canada's manager is Scott D'Amore, who
Yep.
became basically the owner
Yep.
of TNA for a
I
couple of
I
years. It's
actually
just
put
like,
on here. I didn't realize Scott Demore was around with Team Canada because I knew of Team Canada, but I didn't
mhm,
realize how involved he was as their manager and everything. And to see what he did for
yep,
TNA later was fantastic.
yep. And one of those things where I watched the match back, I'm like, oh my god, that's where I recognize him from.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, no, it was one of those things where like TNA is just it's such you could almost call it a launch pad. It's one of those things where now they're connected with NXT like so deeply and almost WWE at this point too, with Joe Hendry now being on NXT, with NXT people coming up like Trick Williams. Um We're gonna see a lot of TNA people. The one person I'm just waiting to see step foot into a WWE ring again, Nick Nemeth, Dolph Ziggler. Give him one last match like they're doing with Matt Cardona, and I'll be happy.
Well, he did the Last Time Is Now tournament.
Yeah, Matt Cardona and Nick. I mean, but like, you know what I mean? Like, Matt Cardona just had another match. Like, give me a match with Ziggler and like somebody else, not Cena.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Give me
Alrighty.
a Miz match.
I'm down for that, dude. They had the best match of 2014, 2015 for the IC
Mhm.
title.
Yep.
Sensational. Alrighty, well, Trolleyzz, thank you so much for your time, dude. I really do appreciate again you coming on the podcast and talking old school wrestling with me because we always talk about what's happening now, but we've never talked about older wrestling and stuff. And it's always fun to see a fan perspective because whenever I'm with people from school and stuff, they're like we get like into the nitty gritty of like spots and like how this was crafted and stuff like that, rather than just we're just enjoying wrestling.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate you bringing me on here. It's been a pleasure, and you really reignited my love for the old school wrestling and going back to watch it. Because after
Hell
I
yeah.
sent you that match, I'm not gonna lie, sat there and watched 2 hours of old school TNA,
Hell yeah.
and it felt fantastic.
As you should. Before we get out of here, dude, is there anything that you would like to plug?
um, I wouldn't say there's really anything too much. Like my name is across pretty much every social. I do streaming. It used to be full time, but it's now as a hobby. You can find me on Twitch. But outside of that, man, I'm just here doing my own thing, my own spot of the internet. But if anybody's gonna follow anything, they better follow this podcast right here, the Miss Retrospective.
Hey,
And
appreciate
Kirby,
it.
listen, I am so happy to have you as a friend here, and I love everything that you've been doing with the online presence in wrestling. And I can't wait to see how far this career goes with you with ROW and then even beyond.
Hell yeah. Appreciate that, dude. Well, thank you so much for being here, guys. As you guys know, I've got a few more episodes here lined up. This today is January 17th, I think is when this is airing, even though we're recording this early January. But I've got a lot more movies coming up. I've got a lot more matches coming up, and that Heather episode where she watches wrestling, like old wrestling for the first time, is coming up soon. So that'll be a fun one. But until then, guys, again, this has been the Miss Retrospective, and we will see you on the next one.